Tonight, breaking news. President Biden says Vladimir Putin has made the decision to invade Ukraine. Russia now with nearly half of its military forces surrounding that country in attack position. Biden still urging diplomacy, warning a war would be catastrophic. Russian-backed separatists reportedly evacuating people from eastern Ukraine. U.S. officials also warning cyber attacks that targeted Ukrainian banks this week could soon hit home. Richard Engel, Andrea Mitchell, both joining Top Story tonight. The winter slam, snow, rain, and powerful winds sweeping across the country. Treacherous conditions causing this 100-car pileup that shut down an Illinois highway for nearly 24 hours. Tornadoes touching down in Alabama, where this storm is heading next. Also, former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter sentenced to 2 years for the fatal shooting of Daunte Wright during a traffic stop. Potter claims she mistook her gun for a taser. She will only be required to serve 16 months of that sentence behind bars. Tonight, Wright's family outraged. Officer ambush, the new body cam video from Phoenix police after a shooting that left 9 officers injured. The suspect coaxing police towards his home, but then raising a gun and opening fire. At one point, a baby brought out while bullets were flying. TikTok stalking, the family of a teenage influencer speaking out after they say one of her followers showed up to their house with a gun. Her father then killing the intruder. The family's warning to other parents tonight. And the cargo ship burning in the Atlantic with thousands of luxury cars on board, from Lamborghinis, Audis, even Bentleys. Rescuers carrying out a dangerous operation to airlift that crew to safety. What will happen to the ship and its high-price haul? Top Story starts right now. And good evening. The countdown is on. President Biden says Vladimir Putin has already made the decision to invade Ukraine and that the U.S. has reason to believe an attack will come within days. A U.S. defense official says Russia now has nearly half of the military units around its neighbor in attack position, reportedly reaching this level of readiness over the last 48 hours. President Biden addressing the crisis today, saying it's not too late to de-escalate and to return to negotiations, but reiterated that he would not send U.S. troops into Ukraine. The president also accusing the Kremlin of setting up a pretext to justify an invasion after Russian-backed separatists began evacuating residents in eastern Ukraine, claiming they came under Ukrainian fire and after an apparent car bomb exploded outside a government building in a separatist-controlled city. Western leaders still working on a last-ditch effort to avoid an invasion at a security conference in Munich. NBC Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell is there, and she leads us off tonight.
With the U.S. saying there are now as many as 190,000 Russian forces surrounding Ukraine. President Biden tonight said he believes, based on U.S. intelligence, President Putin has decided to invade Ukraine within days.
As of this moment, I'm convinced he's made the decision. We have reason to believe that.
To be clear, you are convinced that President Putin is going to invade Ukraine. Is that what you just said a few moments ago?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So is diplomacy off the table then?
No.
And even saying where Russian forces will go.
We believe that they will target Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, a city of 2.8 million innocent people.
Earlier this afternoon, the president hosting a call with NATO leaders, as Vladimir Putin hosts the president of Belarus, where tens of thousands of Russian troops are conducting military exercises on Ukraine's northern border. Upping the ante tomorrow with a more ominous display, planned tests of nuclear-capable ballistic missiles. We are in an active phase of joint military drills, he said today. And now the U.S. blames Russia for this week's cyber attacks against Ukraine. Tonight, the Biden administration is leading an urgent diplomatic scramble in Europe. Secretary Blinken getting Russia's foreign minister to agree to meet in Europe next week. Blinken says if Russia does not invade before then. The biggest sticking point, Putin's demand that NATO pull back and ban any new members along Russia's border. NATO standing firm against that.
I think President Putin's been a little bit surprised at that solidarity, at the way that NATO has come together.
Also at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Kamala Harris, her highest profile appearance on the world stage, with a message to Putin.
We are also committed, if Russia takes aggressive action, to ensuring there will be severe consequence.
All right, Andrea Mitchell, who's been reporting all day on the crisis in Ukraine for us, joins us now here on Top Story. Andrea, I want to talk about the president of Ukraine. He's supposed to meet with our vice president, Kamala Harris, tomorrow in Munich, but it sounds like the world and even Ukrainians are advising him not to take this meeting, to essentially stay in country.
Exactly right. In fact, NBC News is reporting the administration has warned Zelensky it's risky to leave his country right now. Zelensky's spokesman tells us that they'll make a last-minute decision tomorrow before they leave for Munich. But former officials tell me if Zelensky flies to Munich, he may not be able to safely fly home, given the firepower that Russia now has across the border in Belarus, basically controlling the airspace.
Yeah, he could not be able to get back home, and it could sow even more confusion if there is an invasion. Talking about the timeline of the invasion, because it sounds now that it's no longer if, but when. People who are analyzing the situation, reading the tea leaves, were hopeful that our Secretary of State meeting with Russian leaders next week perhaps could delay this invasion. But we heard there in your story, an invasion could still happen, and this meeting would never take place.
Exactly. They have said from the beginning when, as you recall, Secretary Blinken was at the United Nations, he said, let's meet next week if he does not invade first. But clearly the intelligence has solidified. And that's why late this afternoon, early this evening, the president really came out and said that based on U.S. intelligence, they now believe that Vladimir Putin has made the decision to invade and to do it in the next several days. They're also saying by that, Tom, that we've got eyes on you. We're reading your mail. We're seeing the intelligence. They clearly have some kind of intercepts. They've got some sources there. And they're telegraphing to the world and to Putin, importantly, we know what you're about to do, and we're going to respond. Tom?
All right, Andrea Mitchell leading us off tonight from Munich. As we said at the top of this broadcast, Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine have announced mass evacuations of the region amid a spike in shelling. So what's going on? Many believe Moscow is using this as a ploy to invade. Richard Engel's in Ukraine again for us tonight.
While Russian ships today conducted drills in the Black Sea, in eastern Ukraine, Russia may be building a case for war through a crisis that doesn't exist. Today, Russian-backed separatists there on sympathetic social media channels put out a barrage of images appearing to show people bracing to be attacked by the Ukrainian military. An orphanage being evacuated. Air raid sirens tested. And this supposed car bomb. No casualties. Ukraine said it was staged. One of the separatist leaders called for people to flee to Russia, women, children, and the elderly first, because he claimed the Ukrainian army is about to launch an all-out war.
It defies basic logic to believe the Ukrainians would choose this moment, with well over 150,000 troops arrayed on its borders, to escalate a year-long conflict.
Instead, Ukraine accuses the separatists, who are armed and led by the Kremlin, of firing on Ukrainian territory in an attempt to bait the Ukrainian army into a response. The separatists control an enclave about the size of New Jersey in eastern Ukraine on the Russian border. The people here, nearly 2 million, use the Russian ruble, speak Russian, and hundreds of thousands have Russian passports. Tonight, Ukrainian officials accuse Russia of using these separatists to create a fabricated pretext for an invasion.
Tom, Ukrainian intelligence officials say we are now in the midst of an elaborate and potentially deadly Russian disinformation campaign, and that Russia has more provocations planned, including planting bombs in separatist-held territory in order to blame Ukraine for any casualties. Tom?
Richard Engel with the latest from Ukraine, and we will stay on top of any developments there throughout the broadcast. But back here at home now, we want to turn to the storm slamming millions. Recovery efforts underway after multiple tornadoes touched down in Alabama. Intense snow and ice pelting the Midwest, causing pileups and dangerous conditions on highways, and damaging winds leaving tens of thousands without power. Maura Barrett has more.
Tonight, millions recovering from a cross-country winter storm that brought out nearly all the elements. Snow and intense ice in the Midwest causing a pileup of more than 100 vehicles.
We're asking everyone to avoid the area. Please do not travel unless it is emergency.
That road now open after part of it closed for nearly 24 hours. More travel delays in Indiana after a semi-truck crashed. In Alabama, wind whipping into 3 tornadoes, gusts up to 100 miles per hour, uprooting trees, smashing trailers.
First thing I started hearing was like a train coming across. So I got behind my chair and beside my bed, hiding and everything else.
Damaging winds reported across 11 states, 60,000 homes without power, and heavy rain putting 10 million people under flood alerts as ice jams threaten the Northeast.
All right, Maura Barrett joins us now from Chicago Live tonight. Maura, you mentioned there the Northeast now facing down some severe weather. What's next for this region?
Well, Tom, tonight there are wind alerts and winter watches in effect. But what's more, we're prepping for this 1-2 punch as flood alerts are still in effect in the Northeast. The Great Lakes region expecting to see more of that lake effect snow here in the Midwest. And then looking at the Northeast and New England specifically, we're seeing snow squalls projected for the weekend, which could really limit visibility, and that impacts travel. So looking at those pileups that we saw yesterday, something to be aware of going into the holiday weekend. Tom?
No, thanks for the heads up for that. All right, thanks so much, Maura. Now to the controversial sentencing in the trial of Kim Potter, the ex-police officer who mistook her gun for a taser and shot and killed Daunte Wright last year. Today, a judge giving her 16 months in prison, but the sentencing drawing outrage as prosecutors had asked for up to 7 years. Wright's family now speaking out. Our Ron Allen is in Minneapolis tonight with the reaction.
Today, the justice system murdered him all over again.
Daunte Wright's mother reacting to the 2-year sentence a judge handed down to former officer Kimberly Potter, 16 of those months in prison, for killing the 20-year-old during a traffic stop last April, when Potter says she mistook her gun for her taser. Potter was convicted of manslaughter after 8 days of testimony, during which Wright's family said she didn't show enough remorse.
As if killing him wasn't enough to dehumanize him, she never once said his name. And for that, I'll never be able to forgive you.
Today, the 26-year police veteran faced Wright's family.
Earlier, when you said that I didn't look at you during the trial, I don't believe I had a right to. I didn't even have a right to be in the same room with you. I am so sorry that I hurt you so badly.
Potter's attorneys called the fatal encounter an accident or mistake, arguing she should not go to prison because Wright was resisting a lawful arrest.
Mr. and Mrs. Wright, I cannot begin to understand the grief of losing a child.
Judge Regina Chu acknowledged there will be those who disagree with a sentence shorter than the 7 years recommended by state guidelines.
Officer Potter made a mistake that ended tragically. She never intended to hurt anyone.
Wright's family saying the judge's concern was misplaced.
This lady got a slap on the wrist, and we still every night sitting around crying, waiting on my son to come home.
So much emotion surrounding this case. Ron Allen joins us now from Minneapolis. He's been covering this for us. So, Ron, I know the Attorney General took over this case. What was their take after this sentencing came out?
Well, the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, did not hold a press conference as expected, and because he probably didn't want to answer a lot of questions about this. He issued a statement that emphasized that the jury's guilty verdict stands, but the process of trying to find justice continues generally, he was saying in that statement. So it's obviously a lot of disappointment because the prosecutors wanted a sentence that was at least within the sentencing guidelines, which would have been 4 to 8 years or so. The judge went below that, which was very surprising to a lot of people, and I think even the Attorney General himself.
On that point, yeah, the judge did show a lot of empathy. You could hear it in her voice. It appeared like she was tearing up. At another point, we heard from the family there. They clearly did not feel the same way. What is the community saying tonight?
There's a lot of anger in the community that supports the family and that supports Daunte Wright. And this is the outcome that some feared. This was a huge case. Remember, there were huge protests in the streets when this happened last April. This happened around the time of the case of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, the officer who was convicted of murder. People thought that this was going to be all, they find justice here. There was some momentum. But I think a lot of folks will feel like this is a big setback, that this is what a lot of people will tell you is the problem, that Daunte Wright's life did not matter as much as Kim Potter's life mattered to many people looking at this. And so we continue. But there's a lot of anger, a lot of disappointment in the community, and especially with the family, because they feel like their son's life should have mattered more than this.
All right, Ron Allen for us tonight. Ron, we thank you for that. Now to the new phase of the pandemic, with COVID cases falling sharply after the Omicron wave. California joining a growing number of states to ease restrictions. The governor saying there is no end date to the virus as politicians move faster than the CDC to change mask guidance. NBC national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has more.
Moved by the metrics, the national drop in COVID hospitalizations, infections, and deaths. Tonight, every state in the mainland has or will soon lift restrictions like mask mandates. Moving faster than CDC guidance, a nation eager to face a new normal will likely still struggle with a hodgepodge of conflicting rules. Take this year's Oscars. Performers and presenters won't need to be vaccinated, just test negative. But everyone else attending must be inoculated and test negative twice.
We're entering a confusing phase of the pandemic because, one, there's some uncertainty, but also, two, I think we have lacked the CDC guidance to determine what's best to do next. Do we lift masks? Do we lift vaccine mandates? Do we do both at the same time?
With the Surgeon General announcing today he and his family have tested positive for COVID, a new model projects nearly 75% of Americans may now have immunity from Omicron.
While we can't predict the future, we can better prepare for it.
It comes as California's governor announces there's no end date to the pandemic, instead saying the state will now follow a COVID blueprint, focusing on vaccinations while easing restrictions and warning mandates like masks will return with a surge.
Well, we are more capable to understand the nature of this disease, the mutations, its variants.
California's 7-step SMARTER plan may not be simple, but it could be adopted in other states. The basic understanding, COVID is here to stay, and when it spikes, mandates will be back.
All right, Miguel, we thank you for that. Turning now to our segment, Power and Politics. Tonight, the GOP setting its sights on one of its own. House Minority Leader Republican Kevin McCarthy endorsing Congresswoman Liz Cheney's primary challenger. The latest example of the growing divide in the party. NBC's Dasha Burns has more.
Tonight, the gulf growing between pro-Trump Republicans and those in the party who speak out against the former president.
Our duty is to the Constitution.
Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney once again embodying the battle for the GOP. In an unusual move, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy endorsing Cheney's primary challenger, Trump-backed Harriet Hageman.
Wyoming deserves to have a representative who will deliver the accountability against this Biden administration, not a representative that they have today that works closer with Nancy Pelosi, going after Republicans instead of stopping these radical Democrats for what they're doing to this country.
Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik joining McCarthy in the endorsement. A spokesperson for Liz Cheney saying of Hageman's supporters, quote, "Wow, she must be really desperate." It's a stunning rebuke of a Republican incumbent and one-time leader within the party who has drawn ire from her colleagues for speaking out against Trump.
Do you believe President Trump should be speaking, or former President Trump should be speaking at CPAC this weekend?
Yes, he should.
Congresswoman Cheney?
That's up to CPAC. I've been clear in my views about President Trump and the extent to which following January 6th, I don't believe that he should be playing a role in the future of the party.
She was one of 20 Republicans who voted in favor of his impeachment in the wake of the insurrection, saying in a statement at the time, the President of the United States summoned this mob, assembled this mob, and lit the flame of this attack. McCarthy now escalating what has been a steady campaign against the Congresswoman by some members of her party, including Trump. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Republican National Committee voted to censure Cheney and Representative Adam Kinzinger for their role in investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Unfortunately, too many in my own party are embracing that former president, are looking the other way, are minimizing the danger. That's how democracies die.
The resolution deeming the House investigation a, quote, Democratic-led persecution of ordinary citizens engaged in legitimate political discourse. That phrase sending shockwaves through Washington and beyond.
That's not the job of the RNC.
The midterms now a test of the endurance of President Trump's influence.
What will the midterms say about the GOP and about Donald Trump?
We're going to find out what the primaries mean for Donald Trump, meaning will his candidates make it to the general election phase? Will they win? Donald Trump does not have a really good history on this. I think McCarthy's going to regret this.
All right, Dasha Burns joins us now here in studio. So, Dasha, you know, midterms are usually referendums on the president that is in power, but this will be a referendum also on President Trump's power, at least with the Republican Party. So we've seen some polling that his numbers have come down slightly with Republicans. They're not bad, but they're down from what they were. You've been out in battleground states doing a lot of reporting, especially in Pennsylvania. What are you hearing from voters?
Look, Tom, there's no doubt that there are still a lot of voters who are still big fans of the former president. But I'll tell you, even with those voters, I hear from them that they are sick of politicians arguing about Donald Trump. Look, people are hurting. They're being hit by inflation, by supply chain issues, by big health care bills, and they don't care about this Republican infighting. They want to hear their leaders addressing those problems. And I'll also tell you, you know, so often we hear the radical voices on the right and on the left are much louder. They drown out the many, many voters who are a lot closer to the middle and feel like they have less and less space to be heard, Tom.
Dasha Burns for us tonight on the Political Beat. Dasha, thank you. Another note from Washington. The National Archives says some documents former President Trump removed from the White House contain classified information. The agency says some of the 15 boxes that Trump improperly took to his Mar-a-Lago resort had items that were marked as classified. National security information. The archive says it has contacted the Department of Justice about this matter. Back now with an alarming moment that was caught on camera. You might remember this story from last week. Phoenix police officers ambushed and shot while responding to a call. Now, new video of the first responder from his body cam as the gunman lures him into the home, and another officer who was injured speaking out. Priscilla Thompson has a story and a warning. Some of this footage you may find disturbing.
I've been shot. 999!
Tonight, new video showing the moment a Phoenix police officer was ambushed while responding to a call that ultimately left 9 officers shot or wounded. In the video, released, transcribed, and blurred by police, the shooter appears to beckon the officer into the home. Police say they were responding to a 911 call of a woman shot inside.
Come on, bro.
But as the officer approaches...
Who's all in the house? Huh? Who's all in the house? It's me.
The officer shot multiple times, according to police. Calls for backup.
999! I've been shot. 999!
It led to a standoff at the home. As more police arrive, a man emerges from the home with a baby, placing the child on the ground before being detained. But as officers move in to rescue the child, more gunfire. The alleged shooter, identified by police as 36-year-old Morris Jones, was found dead by suicide inside the home, according to police. The woman police received the initial call about, who they believe to be the shooter's ex-girlfriend, also dead, shot fatally, police say. Remarkably, those 9 officers and the child all survived.
I think we were all afraid.
One of those officers now speaking out for the first time since the shootout.
I didn't know what getting shot felt like, but it hurt. I did a quick kind of check for blood, didn't really see any blood, so I continued on.
His superior praising those heroic efforts.
They ignored their own pain and all that other stuff that was going on to make sure that they could complete the mission.
I didn't really fear for myself. I was kind of in fear for the community and where those bullets were going, really.
All right, Priscilla Thompson joins us now live in studio. So, Priscilla, we saw that man take out the baby there. What's the story there, and who was that man?
Yeah. Well, Tom, police describe that man as a family member. They say he was following their orders and putting the baby on the ground and walking out to be detained when another round of gunfire erupted. Police say he sustained non-life-threatening injuries. They do not believe he had anything to do with this ambush. But, of course, this investigation is still ongoing. And some good news as it relates to those 9 officers. Those who were hospitalized are now all back home.
That is good news. All right, Priscilla, we thank you for that. When we come back, those deadly mudslides in Brazil, we've been telling you about this all week. The new video showing the moment dirt and debris swept away homes in Rio. The grim prediction tonight from rescuers there on the ground. And that ship burning in the Atlantic with thousands of luxury cars on board, some likely custom made, plus the dramatic rescue to save the crew. All right, we are back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with the new sexual harassment lawsuit against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. A New York State trooper is suing Cuomo and his former aide, Melissa DeRosa. The trooper has repeatedly claimed that Cuomo made lewd comments to her and touched her inappropriately. She's also alleging that DeRosa worked to cover up the harassment. A spokesperson for Cuomo says he did not break any laws. A Florida police officer has been arrested for repeatedly punching a 65-year-old man 2 years ago. A warning, this video is hard to watch. The newly released surveillance footage shows the West Palm Beach officer hitting the man at least 11 times, breaking his nose back in 2019. Investigators also alleged he put the victim in a headlock and threw him on the ground. The officer claims the man was resisting arrest. He's now facing aggravated battery charges. And an important health alert tonight. The FDA has approved the first ever insulin app. The app from Tandem Diabetes Care pairs with the company's insulin pump and will allow users to administer a dose of insulin by using their smartphone. It works through Bluetooth. It will be used for a type of insulin taken to prevent glucose spikes after meals. All right, we want to turn now to the images coming out of the Atlantic today. A massive fire breaking out earlier this week on board a cargo ship off the shores of Portugal. New images showing the crew being airlifted to safety, but they left behind all types of luxury vehicles worth millions of dollars. NBC's Jesse Kirsch has more.
The dramatic rescue captured on video, a 22-person crew hoisted from an oil tanker as their own cargo ship, the Felicity Ace, burned off the Portuguese coast. The Portuguese military says this airlift came after the ship reported a fire Wednesday morning. MarineTraffic.com shows the Felicity Ace was traveling from Germany to Rhode Island when the blaze started. For over 2 days, the vessel, which according to the Associated Press can carry more than 18,000 tons, left to float adrift in flames. A nearby port captain telling Reuters the smoking ship is carrying roughly 4,000 vehicles. Among the cars, luxury rides worth millions of dollars, including 189 Bentleys and over 1,000 Porsches. A Porsche representative telling NBC, "Our immediate thoughts are of relief that the 22 crew of the merchant ship Felicity Ace are safe and well," adding anyone concerned by this incident and the implications on the car they've ordered should contact their Porsche dealer.
It makes me sad to think about the cars that are out there, the cars that are not going to make it to their homes.
Car lover and luxury auto show organizer Stuart Sobek says many of those high-end cars are bespoke, custom-made to order.
How long would someone have been waiting for one of those luxury vehicles before this incident?
Depending on the model, they might have been waiting 6 months or a year. And it all depends on what the model is. But these are very high-end cars, so this is probably not anybody that's going to miss out on their daily driver.
Now, a better look at the damage. The Portuguese Navy sharing these photos of the firefight today. Smoke lingering, but the Navy still reporting no signs of pollution.
You know, it's just a travesty, for sure, for anybody in the car world.
Thankfully, the potential of burned-out cars appears to be the biggest loss, with all 22 crew members saved.
All right, Jesse joins us now in studio. So, Jesse, a lot of questions here. But first off, do we know if any of those cars, and of course we're happy that the crew was saved, but do we know if any of those cars are going to be salvaged and what's going to happen to that ship?
Yeah, it's all clearly up in the air right now. When you look at those images, it's obvious there was damage done on board there. Porsche tells us that at this point it's too early for them to know if any of their cars are safe, if any of them are severely damaged. We do know from the Portuguese Navy that Right now, they're trying to figure out how to tow this thing to where it was supposed to be going to Rhode Island from Germany. So that's a concern right now. There's no one on board that ship. They have no idea, it sounds like, what exactly happened on board. But there are some car lovers who are really cringing at these images tonight.
The red Lamborghini you ordered, was it on the ship or no?
Oh, wait, I just got... No, that one's okay. It's all good.
That one's good? All right, Jesse. Glad to know. Have a good one, man. Thanks for joining us. All right, we also want to bring you a cautionary tale now, switching gears a little bit, about the potential dangers of social media. The family of a teenage influencer is speaking out after one of her followers, obsessed with the teen, showed up to their house with a gun. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has a detail.
Ava Majuri is a growing social media star.
Give me all ideas in the comments.
The 15-year-old has more than 1.2 million followers on TikTok. But last summer, her family says one of those followers showed up at the family's Florida home with a gun.
Somebody had attempted to breach the door with, I presume, the shotgun.
Ava's father, Rob, a retired police lieutenant, sprang into action, saying he eventually shot the intruder.
At that point, I took action and neutralize the threat.
The Majuris say the alleged gunman was Eric Justin, an obsessed fan who sent Ava hundreds of messages on her social media accounts. Ava's parents say at one point they allowed their daughter to sell the 18-year-old 2 selfies she had already posted online, and that he also paid her classmates for information about Ava. But they say Justin then started asking Ava for explicit photos.
I had an opportunity to actually text this person and said, hey, she's a minor and you need to not contact her anymore, and we notify the authorities.
The day of the shooting, authorities telling local media a man was shot and killed while attempting a home invasion without releasing any names. No one was arrested at the time. Overnight, the Collier County Sheriff's Office sending NBC News a heavily redacted police report, calling the case an ongoing investigation. After the incident, the family moved and Ava started homeschooling.
Everything has changed. More security on our end, more reviews of accounts, more checking in, just trying to be normal for Ava.
Despite the terrifying ordeal, Ava is still posting on social media.
Even afterwards, people seem to say, why would you allow this to continue? It became such a part of her personality and her being that to take it away would maybe harm her more.
One of her latest posts, a warning to others, writing on Instagram, I hope my experience will be a teaching moment for not just my friends, but social media users of all ages and backgrounds. Ava's dad telling us that this was a stand your ground situation and that police told him the shooting was justified. Authorities would not comment on that. But we asked TikTok for a statement related to this specific case, and a spokesperson sent us their company guidelines for users under the age of 16, saying our platform is designed with the safety of minors in mind, and some of our features are age restricted. Still, a cautionary tale for many parents. Back to you.
Yeah, pretty scary. We thank Gabe for that. Now to top stories global watching the deadly storms slamming Europe. New video shows record-breaking winds tearing the roof off an arena in London. Storm Eunice knocking down trees and blowing around planes trying to land. The UK issuing a rare danger-to-life weather alert with winds as high as 122 miles per hour. All right, powerful storms also bringing down this crane in Poland. At least 3 people killed there and hundreds of thousands now without power. And the search for survivors growing more desperate after deadly mudslides in Brazil. New cell phone video, take a look, shows the moment mud and debris swept through a mountainside town in Brazil, crushing homes beneath it. More than 117 people confirmed dead, but authorities expect that number to rise. Many remain missing. Today, Brazil's president touring the damage from a helicopter. And the U.S. has lifted a ban on avocado imports from Mexico. You'll remember this story from last week. Imports were suspended last weekend when a U.S. inspector received a death threat while in Mexico. The Department of Agriculture says it is working closely with Mexican authorities to enact safety measures for workers as drug cartels try and extort avocado producers. All right, coming up, the big surprise for one first-grade teacher. You're going to love this story. Her brother showing up to her classroom after a year deployment overseas. How her students reacted to the special reunion and some of the funny things they said. Stay with us. We are back now with an incredible reunion story. A brother away from his family for nearly a year while he served overseas, surprising his sister right in the middle of her first grade classroom. The students just as excited as their teacher. Growing up, brother and sister Chase and Kaylee Vining were inseparable, which has made this past year that much more difficult. Chase was deployed to Eastern Europe last February with the Army National Guard and spent 11 months away from home.
Having my only sibling, like one of my best friends, gone has been really hard.
So when that deployment ended 2 months early, Chase wanted to make his return something special. And there was only one person who could make that happen. Mom Jolene, who just happens to be a principal in the same district where Kaylee teaches first grade.
It's funny because we were going to surprise my mom as well, actually. And she ended up finding out by seeing a message on my dad's phone. After that, I was like, okay, well, let's surprise Kaylee then.
With Mom's help, they put a plan in action.
She's probably going to say, what the heck is this guy doing?
Chase walking up to Kaylee's classroom, and then the moment they had waited nearly a year for.
Hello. No.
I'll be on you.
Kaylee bursting into tears, her students quickly catching on.
You're her brother?
Yeah.
The first grade class at Audubon Elementary in Spokane, Washington, had heard all about Chase, writing him letters while he was deployed overseas.
By the way, this is my brother that you all sent letters to.
So it was no surprise they treated this soldier like a superhero. Others just excited at the prospect of going viral or hopeful Chase would spill some government secrets.
You look like Area 51.
Area 51.
This duo happy to be reunited, making their mom, their students, and of course their country so proud.
There's not really a better feeling.
Thank you for watching Top Story. We'll see you right back here on Monday. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news now on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.